I am Angie Ham, a volunteer with AARP Texas, and I am pleased to welcome you to an exciting event that is part of our celebration for Hispanic Heritage Month. Every year from September 15th to October 15th, we take the time to recognize and appreciate all the contributions that Hispanics and Latinos contribute to our communities. And this year, we're celebrating in a big way with a variety of free virtual events. So you'll get a chance to learn about our Brownsville history, cooking, gardening classes, while learning different aspects of self-care that you can work on all from the comfort of your own home. These videos, culinary events, historical readings, and more are among some of our presentations that will bring to life our proud Hispanic culture. I also want to tell you that AARP is here to help you and your families navigate through this pandemic. So we're encouraging you to get the free COVID-19 vaccine so you can protect yourself, your children, your grandchildren. And for many of you, there'll be an opportunity soon to get the booster shot to ensure you stay protected from the deadly coronavirus. We want you to have information that you can trust. Learn more by visiting www.aarp.org/vaccinefacts. Thank you, and let's get on with today's presentation.
I'm very excited to have with us today Dr. Tony Zavaleta, who is a renowned author and professor emeritus. So thank you so much, Dr. Zavaleta, for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
So, last year you released a new book called Curandero, Hispanic Ethno, Psychotherapy, and Curanderismo.
The last part of it is important, where I talk about the relationship between, I'll just tell you the relationship between curanderismo, which is folk healing, and mental health.
What do we mean by curandero in an English term? And
well, the term, it comes from the Spanish word curar, which is to heal. So the person who heals is a curandero or a curandera, and the practice of healing is generally referred to as either curanderia or curanderismo. All right, so that's all it is a term that refers to healing. But the important part of that is that it is not medical healing but folk healing. So these are healing with traditions and rituals that are, in some cases, hundreds of years old and have been passed down from generation to generation. For example, I did a book on the medicinal plants, the plantas medicinales of the borderland, translating them from English to Spanish because there wasn't one before my book came out. And of course, people along the border and elsewhere, not just Native Americans, but pioneers and everybody else, have long known that there are many, many plants that have healing properties, and it can be used medicinally. A good example is manzanilla, which is chamomile, which everybody knows is used to soothe the stomach, or the ingredient that comes, the main ingredient of aspirin is salicylic acid, which comes from the ash tree. So the Native Americans would get a piece of bark of the tree, the willow tree, excuse me, not ash, the willow tree, and make a tea for a headache. So those traditions have existed and continue to exist for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
So you've written many books and have had your work highlighted in various publications, and you're a renowned cultural anthropologist as well. Did you ever feel that there was a gap in connecting the work of traditional healers to how we treat mental health issues?
Yes, I certainly do believe that there has been and still is a gap. In studying folk healing over almost 50 years, and in speaking to and interviewing the people from the community that go to folk healers, I long ago recognized, for example, here in the Valley, the majority of people go to a folk healer, a curandera, for an emotional problem, what we might call a mental health problem, and not a physical problem. And at the same time that is a fact, there is very little interaction there's some, but very little interaction between folk healers and medical doctors and providers of modern medicine. And so therefore, I recognized and I believed that many people, Hispanics, did not receive the treatment that they needed when they received one or the other. But if there could be a system, this is what my book is about, is that the need for a system to be created which provides both systems of healing in order to truly heal the person, provide them with long-lasting, sustainable mental health care.
So why is it important that when you wrote this book that some feel that this might be a little bit of a taboo subject? When they think about curanderos or curanderas, they might feel like it's not necessarily, it might be an evil.
There's a great difference between a curandera and a witch, a bruja. It's not the same thing at all, but most people don't understand that. And so they think that curanderas perform acts of witchcraft, which in most cases they do not. There are some exceptions, there's no question about it. But yes, in general, and I blame to a large extent the media, because in the years that I've been here in Brownsville and we've had many very high profile cases.
A lot of those you were part of, but I mean, because you were talking about
all
anthropology.
Of them, that's right. The media always portrays folk healers as evil, when in fact that's not true. And my book attempts to lay that out and explain how that works and how curanderas are benevolent. They're not, there are many fake curanderas and curanderos, many, maybe the majority, that have a storefront and they hang up a sign that says cura, but the reality is that the true curandera or curandero is someone who just lives down the street from you, an older woman or an older man who has maintained these traditions passed on through families, because that's a very common factor, is the arts are passed on from family to family. That number is few, because so many are elderly, or they've died, or they're not practicing any longer, and there are so many curanderos and curanderas that are phonies. Yeah.
Despite the rapid growth in population density, Hispanics have become confronted with a variety of social and cultural behaviors that make it difficult for them to access healthcare.
That's right.
Healthcare systems from a traditional system. Why do you suppose they often choose to see a traditional healer?
Well, there's several answers to that question, but one of the things is you gravitate to what you know. And the Hispanic family is a very united group of people. And so very often, but not always, but very often there's a grandmother or an aunt or a grandfather involved. And so that when someone needs some help, whether it's physical or mental, that information will be passed around the family. And the older members of the family very often say, go see Doña Maria, or go see so-and-so. And so that's how that happens. Now, most people today, in today's world, will go to see a medical doctor first. But if the medical system does not seem to assist them, then they may seek what are called alternative modalities of treatment. So I've seen many hundred, over my years, I've seen many hundreds of people have both medical doctors and curanderos, and they see them both. And hopefully through that reciprocity and overlap of healthcare treatment, they get some benefit. They are relieved of their illness, but not always, sometimes.
What is the mental health perspective for curanderismo?
What is it?
Yes, what is the mental health perspective for that?
I have found in more than 50 years of examining, studying curanderos and curanderas up and down the river, all the way to the Pacific coast, and all the way down into Mexico and Central America, I have found that the majority of cases that they see and treat are not physical ailments at all, but emotional or mental health care, what I would, and you would categorize as mental health care problems such as drug abuse, alcoholism, mental illnesses, neurosis, schizophrenia, and so forth. So the majority and the Hispanic population, and this is described in my book, the Hispanic population barely has access to primary care, much less to secondary care. They don't have the ability to see, in most cases, there are exceptions, of course, in most cases to see a psychiatrist or a mental health care worker. So the alternative is to go to someone who could treat them. And the one thing that is important about curanderos and curanderas is that they take on their patients, I'll call them patients, their clients or their patients, for the long term. There's many cases I can think of where a curandera or curandero treats a person, and I know that's all medical terminology, but treats a person for their illness or their problem for a lifetime.
What does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you?
It's so important for us, for we Hispanics. It's so important for us to recognize and honor and remember our culture and where we come from, because it's becoming very, very difficult. Kids, Hispanic or Spanish surname people, kids in the United States today are not being, first of all, they don't speak Spanish. They may be very distant from their grandparents or older. Their parents do not, for the most part, teach them about their culture or their heritage or where they come from. And I personally believe, and have always believed, those things are important. My grandfather, who was Pedro Zavaleta, was born in Ciudad Mier and lived on a ranch, his father's ranch in Roma, Texas, once told me, I mean, he was an old man, and I was just a kid, but he once told me, we were having a conversation, and he said, "Diles quién eres," tell them who you are. And I really didn't understand what he meant by telling me to tell them who I am. until many years later, when he was talking about my cultural heritage, because I often argued with my father and his brothers about Hispanic heritage, because they would say, no, we're not Hispanics, we're Americans. And I said, that's fine, you're Americans, but we have an ethnic heritage that we should also honor in addition to our nationality. So I believe those things should be taught and remembered and honored.
So I hope everyone has enjoyed our Facebook Live event this afternoon. And thank you once again, Dr. Zavaleta. On October 7th, I'll have a special guest, Tara Putnat with the Brownsville Historical Association, who will be talking about the Costume of Americas here in Brownsville. So this concludes our Facebook Live for this afternoon.